Welcome to the NASA iTech Innovation Speaker Series. The NASA iTech Initiative is an effort to identify innovative ideas through a call for proposals that address challenges in critical areas identified by NASA as having a potential impact on the future of space exploration. Our speaker today is Dr. Jose Morey, MD. Dr. Morey is a senior medical scientist with IBM Watson Research, where he helps direct the creation of novel artificial intelligence-based healthcare technologies and automated systems. Also, as an adjunct professor of radiology and biomedical imaging at the University of Virginia, Dr. Morey consults with companies and healthcare systems to help develop and train deep learning algorithms and neural networks to create intelligent systems. Please help me welcome Dr. Jose Morey.
Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. So I have the luxury to speak to you about artificial intelligence and the new machine age. So essentially what we're going to go over today is we're going to evaluate some novel uses of AI in commercial industries, as well as possibly identify some areas that NASA could innovate using some of these AI applications. So for purposes of speaking today, artificial intelligence is essentially any device or software that perceives its environment and then takes action to reach a certain goal, whatever is determined for that goal to be. So the first area we'll look at is actually drug discovery or healthcare in general. So this is a very unique one that's been going on right now. Typically, machine learning algorithms have been used in healthcare and drug discovery previously, but usually what they've been looking at is actually how proteins may interact or the probability that it may interact with a certain molecule. Things are really changing now, though. They've been going from that kind of old AI systems to new AI systems that actually look at entire clinical information, and that's the novelty of the new algorithms, is the fact that you can actually look at the panomics of a whole system. You can look at the microbiome, you could look at the genetics, you could look at all the clinical information for a particular patient population, and these new algorithms that these companies are using can actually help determine the probability that a drug may be successful or the probability that it will be a failure. Not only can it do that, it can actually start trying to analyze the correct patient populations that will be most helped by that drug. And this is huge, especially in this kind of industry, because oftentimes it's multi-millions of dollars or billions of dollars, and it's many years to decades of work to get a drug from theory to actually commercialization. So if you can do anything that will reduce that time or actually identify a drug that wouldn't be successful to begin with, that is a paradigm shift in the way that this industry works. So obviously these kind of algorithms to help identify and actually lead the research is something that you could obviously possibly apply to NASA initiatives. The way that the old hypothesis was you had a human and they decided, all right, well, this is a kind of, I think this might work, and let's try to explore this. The way that the algorithms are being used in healthcare and pharmaceutical industry right now is they're allowing the machine or the algorithm to decide what that hypothesis should be initially to try to find data points that perhaps we cannot really identify because we can't really see the whole network altogether. This could be applied to all sorts of biologic, life propulsion, climate. It can even be worked with journal aggregation. Obviously, in all sorts of STEM types of initiatives, there's a lot of research coming out, whether it's in healthcare or in life sciences or in engineering. It's impossible for one person to learn it all or to keep up with it all. There's thousands upon thousands of journals coming out, but if you had an AI system that started aggregating all those journal articles for you and actually started pointing out, hey, these are interesting trends that we're seeing, and start seeing things before the human can actually see it, and then they decide what hypotheses or what future work is done, is one application that you could have. In telemedicine or in the clinical decision support space, there's tons of companies. You guys have seen a lot of this probably out there. Google, Amazon, Apple is opening clinics. Walmart is opening clinics. IBM Watson, the company that I work for, obviously has been doing a lot in this space, working with things like oncology and genetics and predictive diagnostic for population health metrics. Other companies getting into it involve anything that has a lot of heavy data. Imaging is a big one. You have radiology, cardiology, dermatology. Arteris is a small company that's just started and actually evaluates MRIs of the heart. So it can actually view all 4 chambers of the heart and then evaluate the cardiac output. The novelty with this is that this is something that was done by the cardiologist and can take anywhere from stated 30 to 60 minutes, and this actually can do it in about 10 to 15 seconds. So you think about your typical workflow. If there's something that you typically did that took an hour and now a machine's doing it in less than a few minutes, that changes the dynamic of what you do day to day. Eyes of Watson is something that I worked on with my colleagues, and we presented at Radiographic Society of North America, which is a big radiology conference last year. And essentially worked on a similar question-answer engine that you guys might be familiar that got popularized in 2011. So you have the NLP, the natural language processing, that would actually evaluate the questions, and then it would actually be looking at imaging and using computer vision or machine learning, find the caveats or the interesting points within that image. We had chest x-rays, chest CTs, cardiac CTs, mammograms, and breast ultrasound, and then be able to show you what the probability of what the correct answer was. And as it digested more information, the different probabilities would change. And then we actually did like a flow diagram that actually allowed the human user understand how Watson was thinking, how the different neural networks were thinking inside the machine. Path AI was actually an initiative that came out of an imaging challenge, kind of an accelerator and incubator type of challenge, out of Harvard and Beth Israel Deaconess. And essentially they reviewed thousands of images of pathology slides that had breast cancer metastasis, and they were able to, with high accuracy, diagnose the diagnosis of metastasis in those slides. But there's other ones. Google DeepMind had an article in Nature in which they worked, I believe, with folks out of UCSF or Stanford, where they actually created a teledermatology platform. They looked at over 130,000 teledermatology slides, and they had just as good an accuracy evaluating multiple diseases as 21 dermatologists that they had on the team. Suspect sepsis is a pre-diagnosis algorithm that was created. If anyone's ever had a friend or family that suffered with sepsis, it's a terrible disorder that often happens in post-traumatic or post-surgical events. Essentially, it's a local infection that eventually becomes systemic. We get about 750,000 to 1 million cases every year. The thing with sepsis is that there's a 30% mortality. So if you get diagnosed with sepsis, it's very difficult to recover. So what some researchers set out to do is actually evaluate if they can predict the onset of sepsis before it occurred. The way they set up the neural network was they took 90 high-risk patients that had a probability of developing sepsis, and they started monitoring their blood work and all sorts of vitals for the course of their stay. And then doing that, the neural network was able to accurately diagnose, predict that patient was going to get sepsis with about 84% accuracy 1 to 4 days before they were actually diagnosed with sepsis. And then they added in 22 normals to just give a comparison, and that accuracy went from 84 to about 95% in predicting that the disease was going to happen. Wearable health technology, I don't see anybody have a Fitbit or Apple Watch. No, nobody has. Oh, a couple people, yeah. If you don't have one, then obviously you know someone that's had one. And the funny thing about wearable technology, it's been around for a long time. I remember some of the first wearable tech that came out through, and that was VC funded, happened like back in the 90s. But back then in the 90s, you had to have dial-up, so it wasn't as user-friendly, right? You could get some information, but then you had to go plug in, you had to go through the noise of the dial-up, you had to check AOL, you had to check your mail, you get on the chat board. So it wasn't really user-friendly. It's now that things are so much wireless and so easily available that it's been really taking off. And this is giving healthcare so much more data, and obviously when you're making a machine learning algorithm, data is king. The Q is an interesting project which is using machine learning. It's based on the Kiwi AI, that's the platform that it runs on, but it uses machine learning to make smoking cessation very patient specific. So it will track you throughout your day, and it will help you set what the goals and the parameters you want to help you stop smoking, as opposed to kind of a one-stop shop with a patch or some other things. So it will help you and kind of tease you along, saying if it feels like you're about to take a smoke, it will say, hey, you can probably make another 20 minutes, or hey, you can probably make it another hour or so. So it helps you with that and targets specifically. The other interesting that they do is they actually turn into gamification. So if you're successful, you actually get Amazon credits so that you can kind of spend it later. Doc AI is kind of like having a doc in a box or a doc on your phone. Its machine learning algorithm actually uses a lot of different things. It starts out with actually taking a picture of your face, and it will make a bunch of predictions based on your face: ethnicity, race, BMI, mood, and then it asks you to input recent labs, anything else that you may have had from your doctor, and then we'll actually ask you to take pictures of your medications. If you take pictures of the medications, it will alert you when you're due for renewal of that medication if you have one, and it will automatically send it to your CVS or your pharmacy, and it will alert them and alert you that your order's already there for you to pick up. The other novel thing about this is that once it has all this information about you, the person that's using the app can actually ask questions. So it can say, do you think I'm on the right hypertensive medication? Or do you think my diabetes is controlled well enough? And it will respond. It will give you, based on your personalized medical output, what it thinks you should be doing. And then obviously you have to talk to your healthcare provider. So remote diagnosis, potential applications for these type of personalized healthcare and telemedicine applications, obviously huge for crew health. International Space Station, long space duration mission, the ability to be able to do remote diagnosis, the ability to do remote treatment or specific crew health monitoring as opposed to just generic crew health monitoring are some of the potential applications that you can use, especially when obviously you take some sort of medical officer on a deep space mission, but what if it's the medical officer that's down? Or what if there's some sort of subspecialty care that's required? There's that lapse in communication that could potentially cost lives and be catastrophic to a crew mission. So these kind of healthcare AI applications could have huge potential impacts on these kind of space duration missions. A little bit more on healthcare, but this is really more with mental health, which it came up in our tour, and obviously it's something that I know NASA's been looking at for a long time, is the kind of mental toughness that you need for these long duration missions. Something that I think is Clay said on the tour was four for 1,000 days. So that's the missions are going to be 1,000 days. He kept repeating that over and over again. He said, I'm going to sleep or dream about it tonight. So mental health is a huge thing. Like, how do you make sure? How do you make sure people are doing okay? I mean, you can do it as engineers. You're doing as much as you can to make sure that the shuttle itself and the equipment doesn't crack. Well, what do you do to make sure that the people don't crack? These kind of mental health applications are using AI as a mental therapist are coming into the sphere now and disrupting the medical healthcare space. One of the ones here is called Wobot. It's on Twitter right now. A lot of things going on with Wobot. They actually have some peer-reviewed journals out. They actually did a study with some college kids. They had about 70 of them. And then they randomized them into using Wobot and not using Wobot. And then the college students self-selected or self-reported that the ones that used Wobot felt less anxious and felt therapeutic effects from it. So the problem that they're trying to solve here on Earth is obviously it's time-consuming and costly to see a mental health provider, so they're trying to give you a mental health provider in your pocket. It's the underlying pinnings or the medical understanding is based on the cognitive behavioral therapy of talk therapy. And so talk therapy is actually really algorithmic and really suitable for some type of text app like this. Because talk therapy, what it tries to make you do is, so you had a tough day, you had a rough experience. It tries to get you to discuss that experience and make you look objectively at it. So it's set up perfectly for this. And actually DARPA did a similar study trying to create something like this. They called it Ellie. Never commercialized, completely research-oriented. And so what Ellie did, and this one was interesting, so Ellie took 239 patients, or 239 people, randomized them into two different groups, and then it told half the group that they're doing this text app, and half the group they told them, all right, you're going to be talking to a robot, completely a robot. The other group, they said, you're going to be talking to a human. That was a lie. They were completely randomized into a fully autonomous robot or a semi-autonomous robot. So there was a human, a little bit interaction, but they both had really essentially just machine learning algorithms that were talking to them about their problems and about who they were and what they were facing and things of that nature. The thing that came out of that was the people that thought they were dealing with a fully autonomous system were way more open, and they would be willing to talk to them about their personal lives and give them deep, dark secrets. The ones that thought they were talking to humans were super reserved, so they wouldn't talk to people, they wouldn't open up. So the interesting research that came out of that was that two things. Number one, talk therapy, perhaps you don't even need talk, you can just text, and people are more honest with text. And the other interesting thing was, well, perhaps people are way more honest when they think a human's not going to judge them. So a couple interesting things. So there's other companies like TheraChat, which are taking the concepts that came out of that to actually help if someone's going to a physical mental health therapist, to help you bridge the gap between one visit and the next visit. So you can actually talk to an autonomous algorithm in between the physical human visits, and then that actually will give a report to your therapist of things that you said, and it can give alerts if there's warning signs for anything. Obviously, for NASA, things you can do for long duration mental health monitoring. And then the other concept is perhaps just a companion chatbot. You know, if you only have 4 to 6 people that you can talk to for years, wouldn't it be nice to kind of talk to somebody else, even if it's just an AI? Cogito, this goes into, and that's how you pronounce it, it's not Cogito, it's Cogito, goes into customer service and the way the AI is really impacting customer service. So this is an interesting app. It's a real-time app that the customer service person is actually seeing on their computer. And essentially, it uses natural language processing to understand the words. It also uses semantic heuristics to understand the intonation and the meanings of what it thinks the words are. And it will listen to both discussions, so both the customer service person and also the person that's calling in, like yourself. And it will start telling the customer service person, it will evaluate if there's overtalk, so 2 people are talking on top of each other, whether the customer service person talks too fast, or whether they're talking too slow, or whether there's a long, awkward silence. And it will actually give them a score of a probability of them about to lose that particular client, or whether the problem is actually going to be escalated. And then it can give the supervisor warning, saying, hey, there's a problem, so if the supervisor needs to come in. So, I mean, this kind of application, at least in my experience, it would be very helpful if I had it when I'm talking with a significant other, so I could see whether the score was getting too bad and I should really settle down and make sure that I'm not in trouble for 2 weeks. Or, I mean, there's some people out there that might see that score go down and really go for it because they like that fight, but it's just up to you how you want to use the application. But for NASA applications, obviously routine meeting evaluations and data generation of how a teleconference went or how a live meeting went to see how you're building interpersonal relationships with team members, team building both here on Earth and on space duration missions, and then perhaps even monitoring how those interpersonal relationships are going on these deep space missions to make sure that it doesn't predict that there's something developing that someone should be cognizant about, that there's some issue. At least to give an objective parameter to something like that. Human resource management. I spoke with some of you earlier about this throughout tours and meetings today. AI and human resource management is becoming very large. So we have things like Monster.com, LinkedIn, and all these other kind of data points that people can evaluate. So there are a lot of machine learning algorithms out there helping companies determine what their FTEs they're going to need, matching or predicting what kind of future needs they have for budgeting and for people power, and trying to go out and scour data sets to find the folks that would most fit those potential applications. It helps with sifting through CVs. I'm sure when you guys put out an open spot, everyone wants to work for NASA, right? So you have thousands of applications. Well, instead of having to force someone to go and review all them, you can have a machine learning algorithm look at the hard points of what you need for that job, and then the hard points for what the applicant has, and kind of sift through that originally. And then the soft points, whether someone fits the right culture, that's where you bring in the human. But there are some algorithms already trying to identify soft points with videos, having people submit their application with a video. And then trying to identify whether they have soft points that will fit culturally. The other interesting thing is we'll identify people that are giving you a probability of someone that's about to leave their current job. So if there's something that you need, you can actually start looking to see, all right, who should I maybe talk to that is maybe upset for working at Google or SpaceX or somewhere else, and I can kind of bring them in. And it'll also evaluate people that are likely to leave your workplace. I know that doesn't happen at NASA. People work here for decades and never leave, but in the private sector, it happens a lot, especially in places like Silicon Valley. So obviously, things that we talked about, perhaps aiding in budget planning and foreseeing future needs before they even occur. Obviously, we're helping with things like Space Act agreements and trying to expedite those kind of budgets for that. Future mission staffing for perhaps missions you haven't even considered, CV sifting and retention. Retail is an interesting one that's being disrupted by AI, particularly when it comes to, they call it visual informatics. So actually looking at influencers. So there's been algorithms that have been created to evaluate your social media feeds and to see who you actually follow, and then to try to promote specific retail things for you based on your social media feeds and based on how someone or an influencer might wear, whether it's a Gucci or Prada or whatever type of Gap kind of dress, how they might actually promote it, and then they will actually show it to you the same way that your influencer that you follow shows it to you, and making things very specific or intelligent shopping for you. Advertising and marketing, again, we're getting into things now that are much more softer skills. For the most part, when people thought of machine learning or any type of artificial intelligence, they thought, oh, well, this only has to do, or this only is going to disrupt STEM. This only is science, technology, engineering, math, because all those things are hard data points. But what we're finding is that you can actually make algorithms that are artistic. I mean, we have algorithms that are already writing pieces of music or creating artwork. And so you're having these softer skills that can be algorithmically disrupted as well. Albert is a particular AI that you give it a couple of terms, and it will create a whole advertising and marketing campaign for you, whether it's mobile, search, social, and you give it a budget, and it will run your marketing budget. And if it feels like, if it's showing that it's the ROI for a particular investment's not doing well, it will automatically take money out and put it somewhere else. That way you can kind of just put that on autopilot. Even things like branding design, you have AI so you can, or applications that use machine learning to be able to just put in a few words, and it can give you exactly what's the best brand for you, and it can set up also a marketing plan, set up a website. It can do this all autonomously, and this is the realm of artists, not so much hard engineering. So possible applications for this is perhaps creating artistic renderings of celestial bodies, or when you discover something millions and millions of light years away, instead of having a typical artist rendering, perhaps a machine learning algorithm that does that autonomously and automatically every time you bring in new data points. So you have both the hard data points that you're looking at for research, but then you have something that's automatically generated to give you kind of a visual representation of what that might look like. Obviously, that's helpful when you have like something that's 3D printed or additive manufacturing to be able to touch it. So these are other concepts of it. So, and obviously, aiding and innovating perhaps on form as well as function is another possibility. Flight pattern efficiency surveillance drones. So this is a project that was done with Microsoft. It just came out a couple of months ago, or they've just first published it a couple of months ago. It was in conjunction with the Nevada Institute of Autonomous Systems. So this obviously might be technology that NASA's already working on or already is pretty pervasive in. But the interesting thing that Microsoft did, one of the researchers that was on there, was that they were making it fully autonomous, so it only uses thermals to stay aloft. And the theory is to stay aloft indefinitely, just by the use of thermals and having machine learning evaluate where those thermals are to be able to course correct and stay without having the use of energy for motorization or having a pilot actually direct where they go. They've flown about 24 flights. The drones are about 16 inches long or something like that, and about 12 pounds or so. They have about 3 different drones that they've created and that they've already flown. Obviously, autonomous research drones for any sort of aquatic or aerial aerospace. I know there's some autonomy that's already been done with drone technology in NASA, but then possibly autonomous robots for ISS support and beyond. Autonomous robots that can do things and help with the crew. an autonomous robot that could have perhaps something like this, something that you guys mentioned on the tour a lot, was sometimes in the space station things might get lost, or a mission that you were planning on doing for that day, or a particular research project that you're planning on doing. Sometimes the crew member can't find the wrench or can't remember where they put something, and they spend 30 minutes to 45 minutes trying to go back and find it. Well, you can have autonomous robots that are constantly looking or constantly identifying where things are so that things aren't lost. The military is looking into using these because apparently DoD, they lose about $5 billion worth of hardware on a yearly basis. And these robots were actually created to work around people with their RFID taggers and the blades that if they hit you, they won't hurt you. So that's possible applications. More autonomous drones for allowing the machines to decide how they're going to collect and what kind of samples they're going to collect. We have these on Earth already doing like water samplings and ground samplings where the human doesn't tell them what to try to pick up. They kind of evaluate it and decide what to do it and how to do it. So there's obviously a myriad of applications, a lot of them already being used in one form or another within NASA. The other one that would be interesting is, especially as with the new CubeSat technology, when NASA starts sending out millions upon millions or hundreds of thousands of CubeSats at a time, if you sending them out as a drone or as a swarm of CubeSats that have a particular mission, then they're going to be able to have to intercommunicate and navigate amongst each other. And then if you apply some of the other machine learning things or possible machine learning things that we discussed, perhaps the CubeSats are given really a broader mission as opposed to very specific mission objectives. And that way they can really decide how they're going to get to, where they're going to get to, and what they look for on the way there. If they find something amongst all these data points that they're constantly bringing in, perhaps they'll make discoveries that we didn't even think to even conceive of because they found it as interesting, so they decided to study it. Agriculture. So agro-AI is, no pun intended, a growing industry. It's very difficult, though, agro-AI to actually do a lot of things with because the agricultural industry is not very IT heavy. They don't have a lot of IT infrastructure. And the other thing is, to make an algorithm, what do you need? You need data points. And if you're only taking data points every 6 months or every year when you harvest, that's not a ton of data to actually create a robust algorithm. But needless to say, that has not stopped Silicon Valley companies spending billions of dollars trying to create this industry, to try to find the best chemicals, the best yields. The applications, though, I think within NASA are really ideal because when you're trying to colonize or another planet or grow things in outside the Earth environment, you actually have the infrastructure to take hundreds of data points, and I'm sure this is already being done, to be able to create these types of machine learning algorithms to help you grow things specifically or to even evaluate what will grow. And perhaps if we find flora on other planets, identify similarities of what that flora might be like to Earth flora and trying to evaluate how it might grow and the best environments to make it grow. Astrophysics or astronomy, you guys probably know about this one. The SLAC Lab, Department of Energy, in conjunction with Stanford's KIPAC, created a machine learning algorithm or evaluated several algorithms amongst one that they created to analyze gravitational lenses. And this apparently, it went from something that would take weeks to do with having experts in the computational algorithms that they currently had, and they were able to bring it down in seconds. They used Hubble telescope imagery to train it. They showed it millions of images from Hubble in one day, and then the next day it was good to go and did just as good and did it in seconds as opposed to weeks. They had, obviously NASA was already working with this. This is the applications for this, obviously huge with some of the Chandra Observatory things that you guys have here, as well as all the other imaging data that you're bringing in, being able to create these algorithms that can scour things and perhaps even identify things way before we even conceive of where they may happen or how they may happen, and kind of leading the hypothesis from the algorithm as opposed from something that we create ourselves. Getting into fintech, I'll go through this fairly quickly. FinTech is something, or FinAI is something that's been coming out. Obviously, someone has probably used some of these applications. This one's called Trim. It helps you kind of use your bills, tracks your credit score, gives you recommendations, works through Facebook. Some of these, some people might actually use these for investment. These are smart. You may have heard about these micro trades that happen. Well, these are machine learning algorithms that it will ask you a lot of questions to see how aggressive you are, how not aggressive you are, and will then set up an investment plan for you, and will automatically invest, and will automatically harvest losses and evaluating how the market is going to be able to capitalize on those kind of changes for you. And Digit's an algorithm saving assistant that tracks spending and helps you save money. And then small business AI lending applications. So the FinTech AI, I feel like something like this, an application for NASA might be within an admin, possibly evaluating budgets or cost savings, or probably trying to harvest investments or harvest capital from a project that isn't going well to then shifting it to a project that is going well, or perhaps seeing a project that needs more money because someone's been frugal and a different department. So having an algorithm that kindly manages the budget and the ebbs and flow of what those budgets may look like. Concierge or relationship services. So this is really AI that's tailored specifically for people and what a person may like to give them a personalized experience, hyper-tailored for a particular individual. The concept for this is that you can maybe tailor it for educational outreach for a particular school district, for a particular age group, on how they might understand or how they might appreciate STEM programs. I know you guys have the Hunch program. We saw that here we work with high schools to actually manufacture things. So these type of algorithms could help you tailor for different age groups, different socioeconomic statuses, different languages, to be able to bring in the future engineers that you need to keep the missions going. Also, you could possibly use these types of AIs for tailored marketing or presentations for administrators. If there is an admin that you're trying to get a project off the ground and you had an AI say, hey, this particular admin really likes cats, maybe you throw in a cat picture in there, or something to really help stimulate that particular admin to help you. Sports highlights. So machine learning has been really doing this on the fly with computer vision, trying to promote highlights automatically, using computer vision to create algorithms that will evaluate something in real time and then be able to create educational things or highlights from it. So using computer vision to do this, actually an application possibly would be using for evaluation of training data sets for quality improvement or best practices from an engineering perspective, or maybe also from crew evaluation and education as well. Journalism, you guys have probably seen this a lot. You may have gone onto one website and then found that you read one article and then go on a different website and you think you read the same article. Instead of being plagiarism, it could have been just an AI or the same bot that was writing the same articles for different institutions. So something that you could use this type of algorithm for is actually to synthesize all those journal articles that are coming out, as we kind of discussed before, perhaps even writing scientific blogs, or even evaluating public sentiment or federal sentiment for future budgets and future planning. Law enforcement DNA AI. This one's very interesting. So there's some machine learning algorithms out there that are actually being able to create mugshots just from strands of DNA. So giving skin color, height, eye color, skin tone. There's these algorithms that are starting to come and start being used by law enforcement. The caveat to this, or the interesting evaluation for this possibly, is once we go to another planet and we find, perhaps we can't find fossils, but we find DNA or RNA, you could possibly create algorithms that will give you a view of what that creature may look like, based obviously on a bunch of AI kind of algorithms of here on Earth. Last but not least, energy efficiency, or all sorts of Nest kind of things that will record all sorts of temperatures and stats. You guys are using a lot of sensor technology and AI already. So In conclusion, AI is still in its infancy, but it is already revolutionizing, disrupting various industries, and you're really only limited by your imagination. Special thanks to a resident of mine that helped put this together. Thank you very much.